Alright, we're going to do things a little bit differently with this one. Not the whole teasing and leading up part, we tend to do that quite a lot. But normally when we get a new artist, name the artist, name the song, put the song up to creators, kind of let things build from there. But this is a slightly exceptional case because this is slightly an exceptional artist. He's currently the Guinness World Record holder for being the most prolific actor of all time. He's also known in quite a few circles as the world's oldest heavy metal musician. You may have heard of him as Saruman, Count Dooku, Scaramanga. He is the legendary Sir Christopher Lee, and I had a chance to sit down and ask a few questions with Sir Christopher. So, Christopher, it's a profound honor to do this interview with you.
Thank you very much. It's also for me an honor and a privilege. It's very kind of you to say so.
Thank you very much. I suppose I'll do my best to avoid the obvious questions here. I'm sure you've received a lot of them. And I'll start with just asking why the return to Charlemagne. This is the second album that you've done about his story. What is it that sort of brought you back to tell some more about him?
Well, first of all, on my mother's side of the family, we are descended from him, and to a certain extent, we bear his coat of arms. 80 or 90% of it. Other things were added. But there's many things about the life of the Emperor Charlemagne which are not really very well known to the public. For instance, he wasn't an all-conquering Genghis Khan, Attila, Tamerlane. He wasn't. He actually lost a battle, a very important battle, in the Pyrenees, where his army was defeated by the Gascons. Now, again, that is brought into our story, and it is an important part of it.
Certainly one of the figures in history that quite a lot of people know, but not necessarily know very well. Now, you had mentioned that you were to portray Don Quixote if the opportunity ever arose. Is there any other character, even possibly one from your acting career, that you think would also be quite interesting to have in this musical format like you have with Charlemagne?
Yes, Don Quixote, of course. I wanted to play, first of all, purely as an actor in a film. But I do think that this particular character, if you really think deeply about him, would be an ideal subject for a heavy metal album. Ivan the Terrible, even more so, I suppose, for obvious reasons. But I have played quite a few parts in my career which have already appeared in heavy metal songs. The Man with a Golden Gun by Alice Cooper, The Wicker Man by Iron Maiden, Lorien, the voice of Saruman from The Lord of the Rings, and of course all of the Rhapsody saga was based on The Lord of the Rings. When I met Tony Iommi, who founded Black Sabbath, he was very clear and very specific in saying to me that he was totally inspired in the creation of that band and the work they did by many of the films that he'd seen me in, which is a wonderful thought, because after all, Black Sabbath, one of the greatest metal bands ever.
The integration between high fantasy and heavy metal has been quite well documented and quite diverse over the years. It's really no surprise you would have so many characters that overlapped. You've also had quite a lot of experience with singing and your acting overlapping in the past, as far back as the 1980s. There have been songs that you've performed as part of your movie roles. Do you feel that the role of a vocalist over that time period has really evolved or changed? And how do you feel you've changed as a vocalist over that time period?
Obviously, yes, you're talking about the 70s. Like, for instance, The Wicker Man. Some of the singing in that was cut at the piano. But it's a question of the music of the time. This is 40-something years ago. Times, obvious phrase, cliche, change. With every generation, every 10 years, literature changes, painting changes, music changes. And I think it's quite obvious that when you go from the 70s to the 80s, there is a change. When you go from the 80s to the 90s, and so on, right up until the present day, with each generation of those times, particularly the young, of course, the music changes in accordance with the generations that we are in, and the music that in those periods we created and continued and changed and improved.
Right, I'd forgotten when The Wicker Man came out. I apologize for that. Now, the roster of musicians that are involved, you had mentioned, you work with Tommy Iommi, and on The Omens of Death, there's quite a lot of other impressive names. Richie Faulkner and Hedris Ramos immediately come to mind. How did you find working with those musicians, compared to obviously the many actors and actresses that you've had a chance to work with over the years?
Well, you can't really complain about working with two of the greatest guitarists in music, which they are. And what more can you ask than to work with the best? I've done that in films, of course, but I haven't done it really to such an extent in heavy metal, because my previous album, The Sword and the Cross, was more symphonic metal than heavy metal, and this, The Omens of Death, is heavy metal, and they are the two, amongst the two, or probably the two greatest exponents on the guitar. So it works perfectly. It's a marvelous experience.
Well, I know how some music fans can get, so saying they're two of the best guitarists out there, you might get a little bit of disagreement from some people, but I won't really argue that. I'm actually a little bit of a fan of Hedris's work myself, and I mentioned him because he does have a pair of songs in the Rock Band Network, released about 2 years ago. And this isn't even your first foray into video games. You've done voice work for a number of characters on a number of titles in the past. So, in general, how do you feel about video games and contributing your work to them?
I've done a lot of video games. Frankly, I don't remember the titles because there were so many of them. But the major difference, the whole difference between the game and the film is that in a film you are watching, you are involved, but not physically. Whereas in a game, you can control it. You are a part of it yourself. And that is a whole different ball of wax, as they say. So I think games are immensely important because you are personally taking part in the story.
Well, Sir Christopher, thank you very much for your time, and my congratulations on completing the second album. I know it could be quite an endeavor. The singles that are coming to the Rock Band Network, Let Legend Mark Me as the King and The Ultimate Sacrifice, those are available on iTunes and Amazon right now. The album itself, I don't know if there's the release date published for that yet.
The information that I can give you is the 27th of May, 2013. In other words, this year. And it just happens to be my birthday, which I hope will also help.
Oh, well, in that case, early happy birthday to you also. You can follow word on the release of the Rock Band Network tracks on rockband.com or on our site, fairwoodstudios.com. As information comes up, we'll be making mention of it there. Until then, my greatest thanks to Sir Christopher Lee for his time.
Thank you for this experience. It's given me the chance to talk about other sides to my work as an entertainer. And it's very important to me, obviously. And to be able to talk directly to you, the audience, and explain what I've done and what I'm doing and what it's about is not an opportunity that you very often get. So I am personally very grateful. Thank you, all of you.